She rolled up my gravel driveway on Christmas Eve with the cops behind her and a megaphone in her hand like she was about to arrest Santa. 10 minutes later, she was the one in handcuffs screaming that I'd ruined her life while the entire valley watched in dead silence. And the exact second she realized who I really was, her face went from smug to hollow so fast it looked like someone pulled the batteries out of her. My name's Remy Carter, and I thought inheriting my grandfather's ranch meant quiet winters, not a war with an HOA president who decided Christmas was a crime. Carter Ranch is 900 acres of timberline pasture and old dirt roads that existed decades before Pine Ridge ever had an HOA. My grandfather cut the access trail back in the early 60s with a borrowed grader and pure stubbornness. He built the barn with neighbors who didn't need permission slips to show up and help. And every December, for as long as anyone out here can remember, the valley holds one tradition on this land. One night of lanterns, carols, cocoa, and cookies where people stop being homeowners and start being neighbors again. There's no admission, no marketing, no community committee. It's just us. That's what Bethany Crowell couldn't stand. If you've ever met the type, you know the vibe. Clipboard, like a badge, red folder, like a weapon voice that never asks, only orders. Bethany didn't lead the HOA. She ruled it like she believed the bylaws were a constitution and she was the Supreme Court. She'd been itching for a bigger target than lawn ornaments and trash can placement, and when she looked up the hill and saw my ranch hosting the valley's only real tradition, she decided that was her stage. The first time she came at us, it was a week before Christmas. The kids were rehearsing near the barn breath, puffing in the cold little voices, shaky but proud. Mrs. Patterson, 73, barely taller than my saddle rack, stood by a folding table with a tray of cookies like she was guarding gold. I was hanging steel lanterns along the barn beams, checking the cords, making sure nobody was going to slip on the packed snow. And then I heard tires crunching too fast on my gravel drive. A white SUV lurched to a stop like it owned the place. Bethany stepped out with boots that had never met mud coat, pressed sharp hair perfect, and that expression like she was already annoyed that the world hadn't organized itself around her. 2 HOA volunteers followed like nervous backup, both holding clipboards. Bethany didn't greet anyone, didn't even look at the kids. She marched straight into the center of the yard, raised her red folder chest high, and barked, "This event is hereby declared unlawful. Anyone participating will receive immediate fines under Section 14B of the Pine Ridge HOA Conduct Charter." The way she said it like she was reading a verdict. Nobody moved. The kids froze mid-carol. Mrs. Patterson's hands started shaking so hard I thought the cookies were going to hit the snow. And I felt that heat rise behind my ribs, the kind that comes when someone steps onto your land and talks like you're a tenant. I walked toward her slow and steady, because out here, you don't match crazy with crazy. You match it with calm, and you make them hear themselves. "Evening," I said. "Can I help you with something?" Bethany snapped the folder against my chest like she was serving papers. Inside was a 6-page cease and desist filled with bold type and fake official language. Unlawful assembly, failure to obtain seasonal event permit, community hazard protocol. She threw every big phrase she could find onto paper, hoping the weight of the words would make it real. I flipped through it, then handed it back. "This is private land, Bethany," I said. "Always has been." Her eyes narrowed. "The HOA has authority over all common areas," she said, pointing at the trail, the barn, the people, including this access route and these gatherings. "As president, I am obligated to enforce community safety standards." Safety. That word. People like Bethany love safety because it sounds noble while they're grabbing control. Across the yard, I saw Sarah Whitfield watching, arms crossed, eyebrows raised like, "Is she serious?" Sarah's my oldest friend out here and the sharpest attorney in 3 counties. If she looked surprised, it was because Bethany wasn't even pretending to understand jurisdiction. I could have lectured Bethany about deed state law, how HOAs can't just expand like a gas cloud and take what they want. I could have reminded her my grandfather's deed predates the HOA by almost half a century, but instead I asked the question that mattered. What changed? I said. Why target this? For the first time, Bethany hesitated just a flicker. Then she straightened like she'd been caught blinking. Because someone needs to keep this community in line, she said. And there it was. Not safety, not order. Line. Like we were children. She turned, marched back to her SUV, and left without another word, her threat dragging behind her like a snowplow scraping asphalt. The family stood there silent, looking at me like I was supposed to tell them whether Christmas was still allowed. That's the part that makes my stomach tighten even now, the fact that grown adults were waiting for permission to sing carols on private land. We're still having the gathering, I said, same as always. Relief hit them like warm air, but fear didn't fully leave. Because deep down, everyone knew Bethany didn't start fights she didn't plan to finish. I learned how far she planned to take it the next morning. I walked into my small office, an old tack room I converted years ago, planning to check road plow schedules for the valley. I opened my laptop, and the first email in my mayoral inbox stopped me cold. Subject line, urgent request for police intervention, criminal holiday conspiracy. Sender Bethany Crowell, HOA President. Complaint location, my ranch address. I stared at it, coffee halfway to my mouth, and for a second I actually thought it was a joke. Then I opened the attachment. 6 pages again, but crazier. Unauthorized community gathering, property value sabotage, subversive assembly intending to undermine neighborhood authority. And at the bottom a handwritten note scanned crooked mayor, these people must be controlled. Please intervene immediately. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. Almost. Sarah stepped into the doorway a minute later, holding a mug of coffee strong enough to wake the dead. You look like you swallowed a fence post, she said. I turned the screen toward her. She read silently, jaw tightening. She filed this with the mayor's office, she said slowly. She's been filing all of them with the mayor's office. Yeah, I said. And she thinks the mayor is... Who exactly? Sarah's eyes flicked up to mine. Not you, she said, like she already knew the answer. I kept my life intentionally simple out here. Most people knew me as the guy who fixed fences and plowed driveways and kept to himself. That was by design. A mayor who looks like a politician doesn't hear the truth. A mayor who looks like a rancher does. Bethany's fatal mistake was assuming power only flowed one direction toward her. I opened the archive folder. Dozens of complaints, some frantic, some detailed, some straight-up delusional. Unregulated child activity, decorative overload. One asked the city to prohibit ranch gatherings that create unmonitored joy levels harmful to the community. Sarah whispered, "She's losing it." "No," I said, scrolling. "She's building a narrative. One complaint at a time. She's trying to document a crisis that doesn't exist." And then I saw the sentence that made my blood turn cold. If the rancher refuses compliance, I request legal authorization to shut down the property entry road. She wanted to block my road. My grandfather's road. Sarah rubbed her temples. She thinks HOA bylaws outrank property deeds. She's wrong, I said. Dead wrong. We thought that was the worst of it. It wasn't. By noon, 3 trucks with magnetic HOA compliance patrol signs rolled up my ranch road like they were responding to a crime scene. 6 volunteers fanned out with orange cones and measuring tapes. Cameras clicked. They photographed my barn siding, the lantern poles, the kids' sleds. Every click felt like a violation, not because of what they were capturing, but because they believed they had any right to be here. I stepped onto the porch. "You all know this is private land," I said. "You need to leave." A gray-haired man in a neon vest smirked down at his clipboard. "Per HOA directive, we're enforcing safety protocols for unauthorized gatherings," he said. Sarah came up beside me, voice sharp as winter air. "This is trespass. HOA rules don't override state property law." The man shrugged, like laws were suggestions. "We'll let the sheriff sort that out." He didn't realize I had the sheriff's office on speed dial. Deputy Jake Morales arrived 10 minutes later, sliding to a stop with the urgency of someone expecting a wildfire, not a group of middle-aged volunteers committing amateur tyranny. Jake stepped out, took one look at the cones, the cameras, the people trampling frost-covered grass, and his face hardened. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. "HOA inspection," the clipboard man said confidently. Jake pointed down the road. "Pack it up. Now!" The volunteers hesitated like they were more afraid of Bethany than the law. Then they started gathering their cones, muttering. As they left, the clipboard man looked back at me and said, "This isn't over. She's just getting started." He was right. That afternoon, my neighbors started showing up at my ranch like it was a crisis center. Tom Rodriguez arrived first, holding a citation slip like it was a grenade. "She fined us $300 for winter decoration hazards," he said, voice shaking with fury. "Twinkle lights. She cited us for twinkle lights." The Kowalskis came next. Bethany threatened to report their teenage son for reckless snow activity. Another family said Bethany implied juvenile services could be contacted over kids caroling door to door. Kids. That's the moment my anger stopped being hot and started being cold. Because bullies love soft targets, and she'd found the softest ones. Then the snowplow situation hit. A county plow driver stopped at the intersection near my road, climbed out, and looked uncomfortable. "We got a report," he said. "HOA claims they control plowing this season. We were told to skip this road until we confirm." I exhaled slowly. Bethany wasn't just trying to control people. She was trying to control infrastructure. If she could convince the county that the HOA controlled access, she could start treating my road like a community easement. And if she controlled the road, she could control deliveries, utilities, emergency services, everything that keeps a valley alive in winter. That's when Sarah said it out loud. "This is coordinated." We dug deeper into Bethany's filings and found a name buried in a forwarded signature block. Marcus Hale, a consultant. Except I recognized him. Developer type. The kind who pushes HOAs into aggressive enforcement, drives people into distress, then buys properties cheap. Suddenly Bethany's obsession with control made sense. She wasn't just trying to stop a Christmas gathering, she was clearing the board, and she thought fear would do it. I wish I could tell you I stayed confident. I didn't. That night, after the calls and letters and panicked neighbors, I stood alone beside the barn, staring at the lanterns flickering against old wood. The valley felt smaller, darker, like Bethany's paranoia was crawling into every corner. And for the first time, I asked myself the question that haunts anyone who tries to stand up to an authority bully. What if I'm the problem? What if I'm pushing too hard? What if I should just cancel the gathering? Let everyone breathe. Let it go. It sounds ridiculous now, but when you're watching elderly neighbors shake and parents whisper about losing their homes, your mind goes to ugly places. I sat at my kitchen table with my grandfather's deed in front of me, and I felt tired, bone tired, not just from paperwork, but from carrying the weight of everyone's fear. Sarah caught me in that moment. She didn't lecture. She just slid a folder onto the table and said, "This isn't about you being stubborn. This is about someone trying to steal what isn't theirs." Inside was the forged map Bethany filed with the county. My private trail labeled HOA Community Corridor. Red boundaries swallowing land that had been Carter land longer than Bethany had been alive. Sarah tapped the paper. "This," she said, "is felony-level alteration of public records." And like a switch flipping, my doubt turned into clarity. Because canceling Christmas wouldn't end Bethany's campaign. It would reward it. It would teach her the lesson she wanted the whole valley to learn: if she pushes hard enough, we kneel. My grandfather didn't build this place for us to kneel. The next day, the escalation turned vicious. The power went out across the valley all at once. Houses dark, lanterns dead, kids standing still in the snow like someone had pressed pause on joy. Phones buzzed with an HOA alert. Holiday power reduction protocol activated for community safety. Electrical usage temporarily restricted. Then another mailbox access restricted until further notice. Sarah's eyes went wide. She padlocked the cluster mailboxes, she said. That's federal mail. I could feel panic trying to spread through the crowd like cold air through a crack, and I stepped into it. You're safe, I told them. HOA has no authority over power or mail. She's bluffing. Utility workers showed up with a clipboard, annoyed. We got an emergency request from the HOA demanding shutoff, one said. I looked at the form. Bethany had signed it as acting municipal safety director. Sarah let out a sharp breath. She's impersonating a government official now. I handed the clipboard back. Restore service, I said, immediately. Lights flickered back to life, but the damage was done. Bethany had shown she was willing to reach into anything she could touch legal, or not, just to make people afraid. And when people are afraid, they stop thinking. That night, Jake Morales pulled me aside. We've got multiple calls from her, he said quietly. False reports, noise complaints. She even tried to get a judge to sign an emergency injunction to stop your gathering. Sarah's jaw clenched. Did she succeed? Jake shook his head. No, but she's getting more unhinged. I looked down the road toward the subdivision and felt something settle in my chest. Calm, hard, final. Good, I said. Let her make a scene. Because now I had everything. Evidence of trespass, fake citations, forged maps, impersonation, and the biggest one, she'd forged my signature on a municipal request. The state attorney general's office had already opened an investigation after Sarah quietly submitted documentation. Bethany didn't know it yet, but she was walking around with a spotlight on her head and a trapdoor under her feet. Christmas Eve arrived cold and wired tight, like the air itself was holding its breath. Families came anyway, not in secret, not sneaking, openly. Kids hung lights, tables filled with food. People weren't smiling big yet, but they were showing up because showing up was the point. And right on schedule, Bethany arrived. 3 black SUVs rolled through the subdivision like a parade of intimidation. Then Bethany marched down my ranch road with 6 HOA volunteers in matching reflective vests, carrying clipboards like riot shields. Behind them, 2 real county patrol cars. Jake stepped out of one, arms folded, watching like he was waiting for the fuse to hit the firecracker. Bethany saw him and lifted her voice instantly. "Officer, you're just in time. I need this property shut down immediately." Jake didn't answer her. He looked at me instead, calm as stone. Neighbors lined the fence, phones raised. You could feel the moment tightening. Bethany stepped to my gate, lifted her megaphone and yelled, "Attention residents. This event violates community safety protocols. You are trespassing. Return to your homes or face HOA sanctions and law enforcement action." The way she said trespassing on my land, like she was doing me a favor. I stepped forward. "Bethany," I said, voice low but clear, "you're the one trespassing." She whipped her head toward me, eyes blazing. "I am the HOA president. I have authority over all community property." "Except this isn't community property," I said. She jabbed a finger toward the trail. "That access trail falls under HOA easements." Sarah stepped beside me and held up a thick folder. "No, it doesn't," she said, "and you know it." Bethany sneered. "You're a lawyer. You'll say anything." Sarah opened the first document. "This is the original deed, filed in 1952, updated in 1978, updated again when Remy inherited the estate. The trail, the barn clearing the lake approach private land." One of Bethany's volunteers took the paper, eyes widening as he scanned it. Bethany tried to snatch it back, but Sarah pulled out the next sheet. "And this," Sarah said, holding it up, "is the investigation notice you received from the state attorney general." The crowd murmured. Bethany's face twitched. "You think paper scares me?" she snapped into the megaphone. "I make the rules here." That's when I reached into my coat and pulled out my wallet. Not my rancher wallet, the other one. Leather case, official seal. Identification. I opened it and held it up so everyone could see. "My name is Remy Carter," I said, "landowner of this valley, and I'm also the mayor of Pine Ridge." The silence hit like a dropped curtain. Bethany's mouth opened and nothing came out. Her eyes darted like she was searching for a loophole in reality. "You're lying," she whispered, but even she didn't believe it. Jake stepped forward then, and his voice carried without a megaphone. "Ma'am," he said, "you are under active state investigation for fraudulent HOA practices, harassment, forged filings, impersonation of a public official, and false reporting." Another deputy unfolded a paper and started reading. Bethany stumbled backward. "No, this is a setup," she sputtered. "He's conspiring. He's abusing his office. Arrest them." She pointed the megaphone at the deputies like it could command them. "Arrest them. This gathering is illegal. I have authority here." Jake didn't flinch. He stepped in front of her, blocking her line of sight like he was shutting a door. "No, ma'am," he said. "You don't." Bethany turned, and for one wild second I thought she was going to swing that megaphone at someone. Instead, she tried to run, actually run, boots slipping on the packed snow arms, flailing pure panic. She didn't get 2 steps. A deputy caught her wrist, twisted her arms behind her back, and the cuffs clicked shut clean, final louder than her entire speech. Bethany's scream ripped through the cold air. "You can't do this to me! I was protecting the community!" She thrashed, face red hair finally out of place. And in the strangest way, that's what made it real, the fact that the mask finally slipped. Because beneath the clipboard and the bylaws and the safety language, she was just a bully who thought fear was the same thing as leadership. As they walked her toward the patrol car, she twisted around and spat. "You're all going to regret this." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I just said the truth steady enough for the whole valley to hear. You don't protect a community by terrorizing it. Bethany kept yelling as the cruiser door opened, but her words started to blur into noise because the moment she lost control, her power evaporated. The door shut. The sound was dull, final, like a book closing. The patrol car pulled away slowly, tires crunching over gravel, carrying her out of the valley she'd tried to own. And that's where my story ends, right there at the edge of my gate, watching the taillights disappear, knowing Christmas wasn't the prize. Freedom was. Lesson: don't confuse a title with authority. Real power belongs to the law and the people who refuse to kneel.